You probably know that Ernie Pyle he was a writer for the LaPorte newspaper before the war, so he had connections to this area. Then again, on a more personal note, as a kid growing up in Walkerton, Indiana, just a few miles down the road, I had a school bus driver. He was a local farmer as well, a friend of my parents, and only after his passing, just a couple of years ago, I learned that from his daughter that he had been riding in the same Jeep with Ernie Pyle on Iwo Jima. And the Jeep stopped, they both got out, and apparently Ernie walked around one side of the Jeep. He was shot by the Japanese sniper. So it's just amazing to me, the coincidences, how recent in a way this history is.
The son of a tenant of farmers near the west central Indiana town of Dana, Ernie Pyle is considered by many to be history's greatest war correspondent. When Mr. Pyle was killed by a Japanese machine gun bullet on the tiny Pacific island of Ishima in 1945, his columns were being delivered to more than 14 million homes. Normandy Beachhead, June 12, 1944. Due to a last-minute alteration in the arrangements, I didn't arrive on the beachhead until the morning after D-Day, after our first wave of assault troops had hit the shore. By the time we got there, the beaches had been taken and the fighting had moved a couple miles inland. All that remained on the beach was some sniping and artillery fire, and the occasional startling blast of a mine geysering brown sand into the air. That, plus a gigantic and pitiful litter of wreckage along miles of shoreline. Submerged tanks and overturned boats and burned trucks and shell-shattered jeeps and sad little personal belongings were strewn all over these bitter sands. That, plus the bodies of soldiers lying in rows, covered with blankets, the toes of their shoes sticking up in a line as though on drill. And other bodies, uncollected, still sprawling grotesquely in the sand or half hidden by the half grass or the high grass beyond the beach. That, plus an intense, grim determination of work-weary men to get this chaotic beach organized and get all the vital supplies and the reinforcements moving more rapidly over it from the stocked-up ships standing in droves out to sea.
Anyway, this is the second excerpt that Ernie wrote dealing with D-Day. Now that it is over, it seems to me a pure miracle that we ever took the beach at all. For some of our units, it was easy. But in this special sector where I am now, our troops faced such odds that our getting ashore was like my whipping Joe Louis down to a pulp. In this column, I want to tell you what the opening of the second front in this one sector entailed, so that you can know and appreciate and forever be humbly grateful for those both dead and alive who did it for you. Ashore, facing us, were more enemy troops than we had in all our assault waves. The advantages were all theirs, the disadvantages all ours. The Germans were dug into positions that they had been working on for months, although those were not yet all complete. A 100-foot bluff a couple of hundred yards back from the beach had great concrete gun emplacements built right into the hilltop. These opened to the sides instead of to the front, thus making it very hard for naval gunfire from the sea to reach them. They could shoot parallel with the beach and cover every foot of it for miles with artillery fire. They had hidden machine gun nests on the forward slopes with crossfire taking in every inch of the beach. These nests were connected by networks of trenches so that the German gunners could move about without exposing themselves. Throughout the length of the beach, running zigzag, a couple of hundred yards back from the shoreline, was an immense V-shaped ditch, 15 feet deep. Nothing could cross it, not even men on foot, until fills had been made. And in other places, at the far end of the beach, where the ground is splattered, they had great concrete walls. These were blasted by our naval gunfire or by explosives set by hand after we got ashore. Our only exits from the beach were several wide swales or valleys, each about 100 yards wide. The Germans made the most of these funnel-like traps, sowing them with buried mines. They contained also barbed wire entanglements with mines attached, hidden ditches, and machine guns firing from the slopes. This was what was on the shore, but our men had to go through a maze nearly as deadly as this before they even got ashore. Underwater obstacles were terrific. The Germans had whole fields of evil devices under the water to catch our boats. Even now, several days after the landing, we have cleared only channels through them and cannot yet approach the whole length of the beach with our ships. Even now, some ships or boats hit one of these mines every day and is knocked out of commission. The Germans had masses of these great six-pronged spiders made of railroad iron and standing shoulder high just beneath the water for our landing craft to run into. They also had huge logs buried in the sand, pointing upward and outward, their tops just below the water. Attached to these logs were mines. In addition to these obstacles, they had floating mines offshore, land mines buried in the sand of the beach, and war mines in checkerboard rows in the tall grass beyond the sand. And the enemy had 4 men on shore for every 3 men we had approaching the shore. And yet, we got on.
Landings are planned to a schedule that is set far ahead of time. They all have to be timed in order for everything to mesh and for the following waves of troops to be standing off on the beach and ready to land at the right moment. As the landings are planned, some elements of the assault force have to break through quickly, push on inland, and attack the most obvious enemy strong points. It is usually the plan for the units to be inland, attacking gun positions from behind, within a matter of minutes after the first men hit the beach. I have always been amazed at the speed called for in these plans. You have schedules calling for engineers to land at H hours plus 2 minutes, and service troops at H hour plus 13 minutes, and even for press sensors to land at H hour plus 75 minutes. But in the attack on the special portion of the beach where I am, the worst we had incidentally, the schedule didn't hold. Our men simply could not get past the beach. They were pinned down right at the water's edge by an inhuman wall of fire. Our men were pinned down for a while, but finally they stood up and went through, and so we took that beach and accomplished our landing.